should you actually start a THCA business? The THC doesn't become activated until that THCA is converted. The easiest way for a state to ban the THCA loophole is, instead of looking at THC only, they look at total THC. And just that small little change annihilates the entire loophole. Nothing lasts forever in this industry. You have to be good at pivoting. You have to be able to stomach losses, and you have to be able to overcome them in order to succeed. 5 years ago, if you would have started a cannabis brand, you'd be rich today. If you start a cannabis brand today and do everything right, 5 years from now, you'll have the freedom to travel, to experience the things in life you want to experience with the people you want to experience them with. You'll have the opportunities to wear what you want to wear, drive what you want to drive, eat what you want to eat. With THCA, on the other hand, it's somewhat of a gray area. A lot of people don't actually know if there's a long-term play here, and they see it as a get-rich-quick scheme. Today, we're going to go over what a THCA business is, the loophole involved, and if you should actually start a THCA business. If you don't know me, I'm Chris. I've been in wholesale cannabis since 2004, and I've held one of California's earliest state distribution licenses. I also built and sold a licensed cultivation facility that scaled to $3 million annually before I launched Zodix in 2022, which has been found in over 100 licensed retail stores throughout California. And I followed Zodix up with my second brand, Lowski, in 2024, offering fire indoor at low prices. Today, I teach cannabis entrepreneurs how to hit $100,000 months in revenue with their licensed cannabis brand without having to own a license. So let's start by going over what a THCA business is. So the THCA business, you have flower tested at 0.3% THC. And what this means is the THC percentage is lower than 0.3%. THCA is a whole different thing. THCA is potential THC, meaning the THC doesn't become activated until that THCA is converted. That A molecule has to be removed in order for it to be THC. And the way to remove that A is by heat. If your total amount of THCA equals 28% and your total amount of THC equals 0.27%. What that total adds up to, you'd think it would add up to 28.27, but what you actually do is you multiply that by 0.0877. So that's a multiplier to calculate for decarboxylation. Out of that 28.27, your total THC is going to come out a little bit below 25%. So what that would mean is you're taking your total THC, which is THCA plus your THC times that decarboxylation multiplier to account for loss. So what's going to happen is when states calculate the loophole based on total THC, it totally negates the loophole, because as you can see, your total THC is going to be 25%. In order for it to be legal, the state has to only look at THC percentage, not total THC. If you hear the word total THC, you automatically know that that THCA loophole does not exist in that state. And you can see this such as in New York. A lot of people think THCA is allowed in New York. However, if you look up the law, they base it on a total THC percentage. And so that right there throws that loophole out the window. So there's certain states that actually accept this loophole, one of them being Florida. Another big one was Texas. However, Texas is in the midst of battling that out, where the state government, it wants to acknowledge it as total THC and negate the entire THCA industry, shut it down. And they're doing this because they want to control the cannabis industry. They want to collect those cannabis taxes. And in doing so, they decimate the hemp industry. In Florida, for instance, the opposite is happening. The hemp industry is lobbying heavy with the governor of Florida, and the governor of Florida is making it work in the hemp industry's favor, and it's working against the licensed medical industry that exists in Florida. And Florida's voted a few times now on switching it from medical into recreational adult use, but that bill has continuously failed to produce enough votes to pass. So instead, the hemp industry has been lobbying the government there, DeSantis, heavily to keep the THCA loophole alive and thriving in Florida. So when you're in states like that, North Carolina is another one where that loophole is thriving. And the thing about it is these states, it's unknown how long that loophole could last. Say if in Florida, DeSantis is no longer governor and the new governor that comes in is on the side of the cannabis industry. That means that loophole will be shut immediately. And we saw it happen with Texas. It happened almost overnight. It's not officialized yet. However, it's getting closer and closer to becoming official. So as you can see, you may invest all your business, all your money, all your time, your efforts into, say, opening a THCA smoke shop or into creating a THCA brand, and then all of a sudden your biggest market could be swept from under you. The best way that I see is to go through the THCA loopholes as a brand and sell to your customers through online sales, such as through a website that allows for THCA business to be conducted. And what you're gonna be able to do with this as a brand is now reach your consumers direct to consumer. So these consumers can start ordering direct from the brands and get the quality products strictly from the source. And that avoids having to go to these smoke shops where the product might be old, it might not be stored correctly, it might not be in good climate control environments. So the stores already bought that, they have to sell it. They don't care how old it gets, they want to get their money back. So when customers are buying THCA through the smoke shops, they're actually getting a lower quality experience because these smoke shops don't care about the brand integrity, especially not as much as the brand cares about their own integrity. So what's happening is customers are being exposed to sub-quality, low-quality THCA flower and THCA products for a few reasons. There's much lower bar of regulation and enforcement. So as far as testing standards go, compliance for mold, toxins, heavy metals, all that stuff, every batch of flower, every batch of these hemp products isn't being strictly tested the way it's tested in the cannabis market. In the cannabis markets, both in California and New York, as well as other states, they have third-party testing protocols where it's not the cultivator that tests it and it's not the brand that tests it. It's usually a middleman that has no alliance to either side. They're a neutral party, such as a distributor. That's how it works in California. It's the distributor that's allowed to submit the products for compliance testing. That doesn't exist in the hemp market. And as consumers, you should care about this because you want your product to be tested well. With the hemp market, there's a lack of testing. In the hemp market, there's a lack of customer service and quality control because these smoke shops, they're so widespread and they're disconnected from the brands. They're usually buying the products through a distributor. Those products may not be stored in a climate controlled environment. So by the time the brand hands off these products to the distributor, it's out of their hands at that point. So as a customer, if you find some brands that you really resonate with, that you care about, that you like their products, it's much, much better if you can order it direct from the brand directly off their website. And that's where I see the biggest power for a brand to utilize this THCA loophole. Because by doing this, you can really provide the best experience possible for your brand supporters and your brand's customers. Now, this is not possible to do through the licensed cannabis market in certain states such as California or New York. However, what's best to do in those states is to actually get your brand into licensed retail cannabis stores. In both those states, in California and New York, they don't allow THCA to legally be sold. So you're kind of left with one alternative. If you want to be in the legal market in these states, you have to participate through the licensed cannabis market. And in doing so, you're running two different brands at this point. You're running a THCA brand and you're running a cannabis brand. Even though they might have the same packaging, the same design, the same logos, the same strain names, you're still running two separate businesses. Let me draw an example here. You're gonna have THCA on one side, and you're gonna have cannabis on the other side. And you're gonna have hemp laws under the THCA, you're gonna have cannabis laws to abide by state specific, state by state. And what that's gonna do, each state's gonna be different. You're gonna have to get different packaging, whether that's California, New York. With hemp, you're also gonna have to get different packaging because you need to have different compliance verbiage on there. So with the THCA loopholes, with the hemp, you still need certain compliance verbiage on your warnings, as well as on the front side. You can't refer to anything as cannabis. On mine, I make sure to remove any state-specific warnings, such as any California warnings or any New York warnings, because again, the hemp laws are federal, so you can't be state-specific or state-agnostic, so you have to generalize it under the federal guidelines. And so I had my lawyer do a deep dive report on the federal guidelines. They issued me their recommendations on how to go about doing this the proper way, the safest way, and abiding by federal law and observing state law when it matters. So based on all this, should you actually start a THCA business? So I've heard mixed intel from different inside sources. One thing I've heard is this loophole was an accident. And what that means, the government fucked up and it makes them look like an idiot. In that regard, that should give us some insight that is probably not gonna last forever. That if the federal government doesn't close that loophole, these state governments are. And that's what we're seeing currently. These state governments are not happy about it, especially if they already implemented a cannabis program or have intentions to implement the cannabis program. Because what this THCA loophole is gonna do, it's like having a hole in the bottom of your boat. It's like they're trying to collect all this tax money, but it's just flowing out the other side because the THCA side isn't collecting that tax money. And consumers are realizing, I can buy this same weed over here for 30, 40, 50% cheaper because there's no tax on it. So these states and the federal government, ultimately, if it's not the federal government that closes the loophole, it's gonna be the states that do it one by one. In contrast to that, I've also heard from different inside sources that this huge corporation is behind the hemp bill. So if that's truly the case, this company that was named is one of the leading companies in the world that controls the majority of what we do, whether that be from real estate to food to media. This company controls a lot of shit. And apparently, from what I've heard from different inside sources, that this company is actually behind the Farm Bill. Since before 2018, they helped architect it, they put it into motion, they lobbied for it, they got it pushed through. And then in doing so, they had all these CBD companies lined up, from farms to manufacturers to brands to even retails, that support the entire CBD supply chain. And if you think back to about 2018, between 2018 and 2020, you started seeing all these CBD products popping up in grocery stores, in drugstores, farmers markets, online. So what happened, again, I'm not in these rooms making these deals, but hearing from trusted inside sources, what happened is this whole entire CBD rollout was architected and pushed through by this major world-dominating company. So we have two conflicting sides of the story. Us as brands coming from the cannabis industry, we didn't have a say in either of these laws. We're just literally rolling with the punches. We're navigating as they come about. We're using what we can to our advantage. And as things close or change or go against our advantage, we figure out how to pivot and still make it work in our favor. And so that's the name of the game. If you've been in cannabis in any capacity, whether unlicensed, licensed, traditional, it doesn't matter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Nothing lasts forever in this industry. You have to be good at pivoting. You have to be able to stomach losses. You have to be able to deal with setbacks, and you have to be able to overcome them in order to succeed. So this is just another chapter in that entire book. And this chapter is just saying where we're at in this time in history. Maybe this THCA loophole lasts for another 6 months, another year, another 6 years, who knows? But however long it lasts, let's participate in a way that makes sense, both for consumers as well as for the brand to make it profitable. In doing so, you have to hedge your bets, and that's where being on both sides, being on the license side as well as the hemp side, makes the most sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't go in just all on licensed cannabis, and don't go in all on the hemp side either. Because regardless of who actually put this law into place, whether it was an accident or whether it was on purpose by private corporations, the states will have the final say. And states that want to control their cannabis programs and collect the extra taxes will end up banning THCA flower. And the way they're gonna ban it is very, very easy. It's a very, very, very simple rule. And I went through this earlier in the video, where total THC is calculated by taking your THCA levels plus your THC levels and multiplying that by the decarboxylation multiplier to account for loss once decarboxylation happens. And that calculation is gonna skyrocket your THC percentage way above 0.3%. The easiest way for a state to ban the THCA loophole is, instead of looking at THC only, they look at total THC. And just that small little change annihilates the entire loophole. So based on this information at this current time, it makes most sense to hedge your bets. So you want to do a hemp line and you want to do a cannabis line. So for hemp, you're going to focus on states such as Florida, North Carolina. Missouri is still, the loophole is still open in Missouri. However, they don't even know about it. They're most likely going to be cracking down on it because Missouri actually has a licensed cannabis program in effect. From some insiders there that I spoke with who've had some run-ins with their THCA business, they told me that the state and the prosecutors, they have no understanding of the hemp or the THCA loophole. So they're going to start understanding it more. They're most likely going to ban that with a simple shift of what they allocate THC under. And they're going to look at total THC instead, and that's going to just negate the loophole. In the states that allow it now, get it while the getting's good, but don't rely on it. Don't depend on it. In California, they banned it by just saying there's no smokable hemp allowed to be sold. They didn't even care about the total THC. They just said smokable hemp is illegal. There's different ways that these states can ban it, and they can ban it almost overnight. So be careful with that. With the state cannabis programs, they're not going anywhere. If they've already been started in that state, they're going to continue to go. The state has invested a lot of money in it. They have agencies built around it. They have tax revenue that they've already earmarked on ways to spend it. They're coming for that money. They're coming to keep that cannabis program running. And if a hemp program is going to threaten that, they're going to kill it off as quick as possible. So hedge your bets. Focus on certain states for the hemp side. And on the cannabis side, you want to focus on the key states such as California, New York, Michigan. If it makes sense for you, it's not as big of a market, but it's definitely the biggest sales market per capita for licensed cannabis. And then another great state to look at is New Jersey. And obviously they're right next to New York, a good population. They are part of that culture where people really care about good cannabis. And New Jersey has a cannabis program in place. It's already up and operational. They have a pretty decent supply chain built out. It's continuing to expand, and they definitely need to expand more, especially with the cultivation side. Same with New York. They're definitely lacking on indoor cultivations. And we're gonna see that continue to expand in the future here. The one thing that's left unknown that would be a huge win for everybody would be interstate commerce. And that is kind of happening now with the hemp laws. However, it's not true interstate commerce. And for true interstate commerce, I'm talking about where California can grow the weed and then legally export it to licensed states such as New York, Michigan, New Jersey, and any of the others that agree to doing this. When and if that is to take place is very tough to say, because there's the banking issue at play, there's the federal 280E law at play, which I've gone over in other videos. And just these two things alone are so intertwined with society, with our laws, with our government, with our infrastructure, with the banks. All this stuff is so deep and so tied in that it's not a quick fix. It's not something easy that they can just do. So until interstate commerce happens, we're dealing with these fragmented state by state laws ultimately. And it's being convoluted and confused by the federal hemp law. So until that happens, with all this static in the market, us as independent brands, as hustlers, as non-conformists to the laws, we want to take advantage of this uncertainty right now. This is a huge opportunity, especially for brands, and especially if you're a brand that's being sold in California and New York, because you can build that presence. These are like the world stages to cannabis market. So if you're a brand that is known in New York, and especially if you're a brand that's known in California and being sold on California licensed retail shelves, that means a lot to the rest of the world. And it's gonna elevate your brand, the credibility that your brand carries, and the way that they receive your brand. It's gonna be completely different than if it's just a brand being sold on the streets. So understand the power of perception. Just these two licensed markets alone, California and New York, is gonna be a night and day difference for your brand if you're in licensed stores in one or both of those states. And if you're just a THCA brand only, your credibility is gonna be lowered. A lot of people are gonna look the other way. They're gonna think it's a fake weed. It's not, a real brand, it's shitty quality, it's illegal, whatever they think, there's gonna be room for interpretation. But on the licensed cannabis side, there's nothing they can really say. You're abiding by state law. In order to even participate in that, there's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of uphill battles to go up against. And so you actually gain a higher level of respect by having your brand in these licensed markets, especially in California, because that market has definitely proven to be challenging in the past, and it's put a lot of brands out of the market. And a lot of reasons why is because they didn't operate the brand properly, or they came in thinking they had a monopoly because of their supply chain, when it was really a burden for them. It didn't allow their brand to flourish. Check out the other videos on my channel. Be sure to join my free community. We have a lot of great info in there. We have a great network of other like-minded cannabis entrepreneurs. They all have their own brands in different situations. Some are in licensed stores, some are transitioning into the licensed stores, some have hemp brands, some have both. So I look forward to seeing more of you join our free community, and also follow the Instagram for daily videos on how you can start and scale a licensed brand without owning a license. So be sure to hit the link below this video in the description. I made a 30-minute brand building course. It's completely free, and it breaks down from start to finish what it looks like to transition from the unlicensed market into the licensed market and running your brand on both sides. It's very valuable. Also, join my free community. The link is also down below, and that's where I put out free PDF info each week, starting to do live calls on there. We also have a great community of like-minded entrepreneurs in there that is perfect to network with and utilize some of the knowledge that they've already dealt with, that they've gone through, that you might be starting to experience.